am 8:02. I'm going to call the meeting to order since I set up the meeting. And one of our things on the agenda is to elect a chair who will take over the meeting. So as a preliminary matter, I am Beth Schreiber, Director of the Grafton Public Library, and I'm going to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Aaron Vandestein.
Hi, here. Hello.
Thank you. John Bobrisky.
I'm here.
Staff, when I call your name, please answer in the affirmative. Debbie Jackson.
Here.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry.
We invited Stephanie Texera, who probably had a conflict. I'm not clear quite on who's interested in serving on policy committee, but because we are doing these in public meeting, we could have 3 people. We don't have to limit to 2. The rest of the script, this is an open meeting of the Grafton Public Library Board of Trustees Policy Subcommittee, and we are conducting it remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, which has just been extended. I forget to what date, but I think we just got another couple months. So due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus, in order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. We did leave a spot for public comment on our agenda tonight. So if people from the public show up and want to talk, happy to hear them talk. The order is posted still on the town's website at grafton-ma.gov that allows public bodies to continue to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of our meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless it's required by law. Again, we will feature public comment if people show up. For this meeting, the Grafton Board of Library Trustees Policy Subcommittee is convening by Zoom as posted in the agenda on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. The meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer, and anything you broadcast could be captured by the meeting. In a strange twist of fate, I was actually very well prepared for the meeting, and all of the supporting materials appeared online in advance of the meeting for people to review and were provided to the members of the body. So they are still available on the town's website as part of the agenda. And you can follow along with that posted agenda. And I'll be screen sharing as well. We're turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes, which hopefully Debbie's taking. I and then the elected chair will introduce any speakers on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair can go down the line of members and inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. And please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you. There's a convenient hand raise icon somewhere on your Zoom menu. And it's really helpful if you will state your name before speaking, like Beth, or Beth, I wish to make a motion. If you wish to engage in colloquy with your other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. There's a public comment section, which is if we have a public comment or question received in the advance of the meeting, we'll read that aloud. We don't have any. Public comments during the meeting will be conducted through the chat feature in Zoom. We will real-time comments in the chat feature, followed by real-time board or applicant responses. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Wow, that was a lot. Thank you for your patience. So let me share my screen and see if I can find the agenda, which I just had up. Here we go. So we did a call to order at 8:02. And then we're looking to reorganize because as a staff member, I should not actually be the chair for this meeting.
Yeah.
Aaron.
So I'd like to just start on that topic. So I originally had joined the policy committee because it was a part of the board that I never really got to be part of. And I guess I didn't always, I wanted to provide more input into the policies that, that we were signing off on as a board, right? And certainly seeing that we have a renovated library, I don't want to say new library, but a renovated library that has crazy new needs that we never anticipated before. And some of the policy just doesn't fit, or we need new policy. So that's what kind of got me excited about it. That said, I don't know that I was thinking of maybe chairing the subcommittee because Daniela used to chair the subcommittee. And all that is she would lead the discussion and she would be our point person for the board to just kind of deliver what the policy committee has been up to. But I'm not sure that I'm interested in chairing this committee at this juncture. I don't know, what are your thoughts, John? I know you're just brand new to the board and also the committee, so.
I wasn't really planning on chairing it either, because I just wanted to, I mean, I definitely want to actively participate, but I figured I'd let someone else kind of lead, especially with some of the kind of administrative things, which I think are generally not my forte, so.
Okay, well, here's what I propose then. Perhaps I could chair the committee for the short term, and then perhaps in a month or so, you can decide to take over and we can take turns. I don't know,
Okay.
just to shake it up a bit. I mean, I'm not saying that anybody needs to be the chair for an entire year. But also you can also still elect to start with that new information if you want. If you want, I can start off, up to you.
Yeah, so this is John. Why don't you start? But that sounds good. If I can kind of just see you do it a little bit, then maybe I can take over after that.
Okay, great. So
Thanks.
I'll probably stumble through this a bit my first time.
So do we need
Yeah.
to make a motion and have
Sure.
a roll call? I think that's probably the way to do it,
Yeah, absolutely.
formality's sake. Either that or we nominate Stephanie.
So yeah,
Maybe.
I think just from a participation standpoint, she's not always available, and she's also the vice chair of the board. So not to hold too many hats is probably best for anybody. So John, I'll allow you to make a motion if you'd like to nominate a new
Yeah,
chair.
this is John. I'll make a motion for Aaron to be chair of the policy subcommittee.
Okay. And I think anybody else can second it, right?
And I'll second it. Am I officially on the committee? I guess.
Yes, you are. You have been.
I'll
You're
second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. All in favor? Aaron, aye. John
John, aye.
and Beth,
Aye.
and Debbie's part of the policy committee, right? So
Yeah.
you have
Am
a
I?
vote as well. Yes, you are.
Okay, aye.
Great. I declare the motion carried. Okay. On to the next order of business. We have two policies to review tonight, the unaccompanied adult policy and then the minimum staffing policy. So perhaps Beth, you could bring me up to John and I up to date on the goings on of the policy committee. Is this something that you guys haven't reviewed yet, or is this the first time looking it over?
It's the first time looking it over since we passed it, I think a year ago. So the unaccompanied adults policy was created to keep adults without children out of the teen and children's room for the safety of youth under age 18. So not to say that they can't go in the room at all, they are welcome to go in and grab something, but the intent is we have very limited seating still, even with our expanded library, for children 0 to 18. And we need to keep the youth services space is reserved because seating and space is limited, but also because parents tend to be uncomfortable with adults who they don't know, who are over 18, just hanging out and sitting in youth services spaces when there are spaces that are age appropriate for adults throughout the building. This was a trend I heard about 20 years ago when I was a library school student. I went to visit the Boston Public Library, and we had to get an exception to go into the teen and youth services spaces as students because they had a very strict kids and their caregivers only policy for both of those spaces. And that was, something we discussed in class, something that was a trend in other libraries, and something that I have seen in the other libraries that I've worked for and visited. So when we developed a teen and tween space and a really separate children's space, we brought this policy to policy committee. Again, it doesn't say that adults can't be in those spaces. It just says they should be accompanied by a youth of the appropriate age for the space. And they shouldn't be hanging out and then, taking access away from kids and teenagers because they're using, the computers or the seating or whatever. And this was brought to legal, passed through policy committee, and was brought back to the board, and they voted to approve it. And it's a sound policy. Again, like the Mass Library Association Youth Services section supports this idea. So does the Young Adult Library Services Association. And then we had an incident back in March of a developmentally delayed adult who was over 20 years old with his caregiver sitting in the teen space playing a children's game that they had taken out of the children's room and brought into the teen space and sat in the booth seating in the teen area. And the teen room was busy at the time, but we weren't out of seating. Most of the kids were in the maker space and in the gaming room, jumping up and down and dancing and generally being loud and disruptive as they want to be in that space. And I happened to be working in the room and walked by and said, "Oh, are you looking for something in the teen space today?" And he said, "No, we just want to sit in here." I said, "Oh, are you with a teenager, with somebody in this group?" And they said, "No, we just want to sit in here." And I said, "Well, are you teenaged?" Because I really couldn't tell. And the response from the caregiver was like, "Nah, what do you think?" I can't tell, I don't know. So they clarified, no, this is an adult.
Mhm.
And developmentally delayed and he wants to sit in a space. I said, "Oh, okay, well, our policy is that he can't. You can come in and get things, but then you need to go to adult spaces." And she said, turned to her client and said, "Is that okay? Do you mind if we move to another space?" And he said, "Yes, that's fine." And then a complaint was lodged that they were asked to move, presumably because there was seating available. But also there was a sense that I had been discriminatory by asking the developmentally delayed adult to leave the teen space. So this was brought forward as correspondence to our local disabilities commission. And they still have it as an unresolved item on their agenda that there was this complaint, which was disclosed on social media in a way that made the library look very poor. I had reached out to the caregiver who had complained, and they will not call me back and have a conversation to further resolve it. They want for this policy to be changed, for exceptions to be made, and for the staff to undergo certification in how to provide service to developmentally delayed or people on the spectrum, which I've investigated, and I don't have a price quote back yet.
So
that's the background.
Yeah, so I've heard most of that, but I think for John's benefit too, he may not have had that some of the background there. Unless there are changes that are being kind of brought to the policy committee, it's hard to really say how this may fit others' needs in a way that they would like. I don't know about exceptions to the policy. I guess it's always up to the discretion of the staff, whether, maybe you can comment on this, Beth, but if it's really not going to be an issue, there's nobody hanging around, 1 or 2 kids, and you don't see it being a disruption or a gross violation of policy, you might let it go, right? But you can't write that into a policy.
Right. Yeah, and the other piece is we offered, once we kind of got to the heart of the matter, which was this is actually somebody who doesn't want a quiet place to sit, who wants noise and bustle around them. The reasonable accommodations that were suggested were to sit in a high traffic area like the Friends Corner with the game and play there, or to go into one of the meeting rooms and turn on, there's a TV in most of our, quiet study or tutoring spaces. So if you want to create some sound or white noise, it's easy to do that. And the client and caregiver and client, I guess, felt like if they went into, say, the adult spaces like the historic reading room, the new book room, or the seating upstairs along, the windows where the wetlands are, that they would become the disruptive ones because they were going to talk and play this game. And that was part of the reason they wanted the noise. So I felt like I made several reasonable accommodations, and we do have a policy for service to persons with disability that talks about all, many different kinds of accommodations, and that we're always really willing to make accommodations, but I felt like we made reasonable accommodation, which would, wasn't the exception, but we made reasonable accommodation and it was refused.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to change this policy because we have this other policy that says we do our very best to serve and make these accommodations.
So I think I'm a teenager at heart. Jackie says so. And I love the teen space. I mean, I want to spend every visit to the library in that teen space. But I understand, I'm an adult, and hanging around without teenagers is just, it's not appropriate. And I certainly understand the situation of somebody who's developmentally disabled, who still feels like a kid at heart, just like I do at times, but kind of looking at some of the other libraries, I haven't done a lot of research, but a lot of what I've seen for policy is really surrounding libraries that don't have a lot of space, right? So I think I sent something to you that it says teen area is for exclusive use of teens between 2 and 4 p.m. On like Thursdays and Fridays or something like that. So I've seen things like that, to give so that you could really give adults more access to the teen materials. But that's the only thing that I could see possibly modifying is that, if it's a really busy time for teens, and we know what those are now. I mean, we're almost a year in the library. We could write policies surrounding certain times. But is the policy written in a way that no adults can loiter or linger?
Yeah, it's the loitering or linger. It's not that they can't get to the material. They can always get to the material. It's you can't then sit and read that graphic novel that or novel right there in the teen space. You need to take it somewhere else so you're not either coming across as the creepy person in the teen room, to be blunt, or taking away the teen room has the coolest seating in the building.
Yeah,
and that's on purpose, right? Those booths and the chairs, they're really comfortable and cool, but it's not, the space is for teenagers and designed and selected by teenagers, so it's just not for adults. And we also have an issue of, we could say teens have preference during non-school hours, and that might be very fair to say, except the truth is the room is often locked during school hours when adults could come in and not interfere with teenagers in general, right? Because we don't have staffing. So if it's Monday or Tuesday and we don't have anyone coming in till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the room is closed and locked until from 10 to 1. And staff will use the key and let somebody in. But again, it's like you can browse, but you have to pick out your materials and then go. You can't hang out here because it's unstaffed and it's therefore, not safe.
Okay.
So.
Well, at this point, and for the sake of time, I mean, I can't propose any additional changes that I would feel would be reasonable at this time until I would say I'd like that this is in the Disability Commission's hands, and I'd like them to review it and perhaps come back to us with some feedback so that we can consider it.
They're looking for town legal opinion, which we've asked for twice and have not yet received. Legal review to say, what we approved a year ago stands and is legal, or, oh, we hadn't thought of that angle, and yes, you do need to change it.
Okay,
So we have no council opinion, but they're, I think, looking for us to say, yes, it's okay, or no, it's not. Yes, no, or yes, we need to change it, or no, we don't.
yeah. At this point, I don't feel we need to change it. Situations like that might be few and far between, but I think it's reasonable for a librarian to say, oh, would you mind taking this, down the hall? There's some great spaces for you upstairs, or, just take your stuff and go, to be blunt. You don't have to say that, but yeah, okay. John, any further feedback?
No, this is John. No, I think that's all reasonable. I think it's it's an unfortunate situation, but I think the policy is written, with the teens and tweens in mind. And that's kind of the purpose of the space. But yeah, I think that other commission that you were referencing, if they do come back with some sort of recommendation, then we can definitely re-review this and see if there's something we can do.
Okay, thanks, John. I do recall there's a distinct reasons why we wrote this policy, because it was always needed. And I think it's really good policy because there's never really been a space for our teens at the library, even in the, there was a small space at the church for a time. But even then, like if, adult would be in there with a laptop, we talked about this, that it kind of deters teens from using that space. And that's why we wrote this policy. Okay, great. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, let's move on. So we have the minimum staffing policy.
Do you want to look at the current one first? I don't know if I can put those up on the screen, or just the one with the changes.
I'd like to see the one with the changes. I'm pretty familiar with it. So how long has this one been in draft? The second draft since May, is that right?
Yeah, and we hadn't met. We had tossed it around a couple of times, and then I heard the committee chair, or maybe it was, I think Stephanie at a meeting say, that it had continually come up. So it's like, oh, okay, well, if it sounds like we're in agreement that this is the change we need to make, then I'm going to draft it and send it out for discussion.
Yeah.
There was also, we are short-staffed. 4 people are really not enough to run the building. 5 people are not enough to run the building. We really need 6. And that has been the experience in the past almost year. But until the minimum staffing policy changes, we feel like we really can't close if we don't have enough people and it's not safe. And it's also a little bit of additional pressure on the town to adequately fund and staff the library, which they're required to do per the grant that we received. If like the teen room should not have to be closed for 3 or 4 hours every day because they're, or during a dinner or lunch break, because there's no people to be in that room. And that's what's happening. We don't have reference desk coverage all the hours the library is open.
Yeah, I agree. 4 people aren't enough to run the library. Fewer than 4 people, that's what this says. So it really means 3, 2 or none.
So the highlight is what I would like to change. I'd like to change 4 to 6.
Uh-huh.
because right now it's if 5 staff members are available, then we'll have 1 staff member at each desk, which means nobody can go to a meal break. If 4 staff members, then we close children's or teen because we can't lock off the second floor. So now youth services is always getting the short end of the stick because they have doors they can lock. And really C should read, if fewer than 6 staff members are available, the library will close to the public.
Yeah,
Even this draft is a bit inaccurate. It should say 6.
okay. So I guess for my benefit and maybe John's, what does the staffing look like for you know, an adequately staffed library or full, let's say fully staffed. So is it 12?
No, it would be 6 people to keep all 5 service desks open. And then depending, it kind of depends on the schedule of the day. So if there's like a story time, then that 6th person really can't just go do story time. They have to be available for if somebody needs to step away from a service desk. So now you're talking 7, 8, you know, a typical shift, we might have 9 to 10 people. That's ideal because there are managers who need 80% of their time to be off the desk to get their managerial work done. So now, like, you know, Heidi and Susan and you know, myself and Dot, we're getting called to come and cover the service desks. So frontline staff can do programs or take meal breaks or whatever. So I don't have a like, we really need 10 to 12 on every shift, but without, we really need to have 6 to keep the building open. It shouldn't be that we're down to 5, so we're going to stay open. Like if we don't have 6 people, we need to close down.
Yeah. So if I'm I don't really walk the entire library every time I visit. But I generally see someone at the bottom of the stairs and the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
Where else are this? Oh, sorry, the children's room and the teen room.
Yeah.
But it's usually 2 staff in the children's room
Yeah.
generally, right?
Yeah. So it does get quiet around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But it's busy enough. Like the ideal is in the children's room, there's 1 person on the desk, and then there's 1 person who can be working in the back room, or you know, Sarah's in her office doing program prep, or somebody's at the school doing a program, or somebody's in the program room doing a program. But it's actually so busy they need right now with summer reading, they actually need people out on the floor answering questions and responding to patrons, which leaves no time. So then if there's a program and someone leaves that desk on the floor, there's an extra desk to go into the program. Now the person at the desk is getting slammed with, you know, and people are waiting in line to be helped. And you can't get away from the desk to go and collect items to shelve, to pick up the room, to replenish the coloring sheets, to provide any support to the person in the program. So ideally there's 2 in children's, there's 2 in YA, there's 1 in the lobby desk. And every time someone steps away from the lobby desk to help a patron or go into the back room for 10 minutes to unload the sorting machine, there should be somebody like, it's like pole position. You crash your car and a truck comes along and a new car comes out. Like we do not have that kind of support. We have abandoned desks because there are not enough bodies to go around. We've
So if you had 4 staff members, which is what this policy says, right? The current policy says it says fewer than 4, but if it says 4,
yeah.
It says here which desks will remain open.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is really difficult because, you know, I guess fewer than 6. We're talking about 5 people. If 5 people show up to work, you know, we're telling the public that we have to be closed, right?
Yeah. It works from 10 in the morning until noon, and it works from 6 to 9 at night.
Yep.
But if we only have 5 people from 12 noon to about 6 o'clock, people need lunch coverage. And they can't, like, you can't give 5 people lunch breaks when they have hour lunch breaks between 12 and 6. And then also start dinner breaks at 4 o'clock so that dinner breaks are done before the night shift comes in.
You're right. I didn't consider that.
Yeah,
So-
so one of the things we've experimented with is, okay, well, what would happen in that case if there's 5 people between 12 and 6 and everyone needs lunch? You could close from 12 to 1. And everybody could have lunch together, either on site. A lot of people live close and go home.
Mhm.
So in some ways, like you could say, all right, well, Heidi only has half an hour and she's gonna just be right in the break room and we can call her out if we really need her. But if like Cindy's gone home for an hour to eat lunch, then she's completely left the building. So now we don't even have, the minimum in the building anymore.
Have you received any feedback from staff on this policy?
Oh, yes, why are we using the same policy, minimum of 4 people for that we had in place for a 7,200 square foot facility? And you expect those same 4 people to be able to cover 25,000 square feet
Mhm.
with the uptick in circulation, library cards, traffic. It's untenable. And nobody wants to eat lunch at 11 o'clock in the morning or go to dinner at 3 o'clock. They balk honestly at going to dinner at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The evening shift is from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. And if the day shift is 9 to 5, that means that if you're from 1 to 9, you have to finish your dinner by 4 o'clock because there just are not enough staff at night to go at 5 or 6 or 7 because you've again left the building or you're off the desk, you're not available. Or there's night programs, right? So night
Mhm.
programming might be at 6:30 or 7. So you've got to get those dinners out of the way with. And I tell people, if you can work it out in your department to go later and then you don't mind being alone, fine. But for the schedule, what works the best is for everybody to be done with lunch by 1 o'clock and everybody to be done with dinner by 5 o'clock by shift change. But that's not convenient.
Right. So
Lots of feedback about it.
yeah, that's great. That's what I was looking for. So if we say that fewer than 6, which means 5 people show up, we're going to probably start to have to close the library more often. I mean, I'm sure this has probably happened a few times where you only had five people in the building and couldn't cover lunches or dinners, and that was really disruptive. So this is very tricky, right? Because we've been asking for staff from the town for a while to help staff the larger library, right?
5 years.
And, yep.
In
and that-
anticipation of this issue.
Right. And this may start to force the hand of the town to start really hiring the people that we need to staff it once they start seeing that we're closing the library often. Which, it's I can see how nobody wants to be back into a corner, right? But we've been asking, and to that end, so that's one thing I see with this. The other piece to this is, let's say this has happened 4 times every month, right? So we're closing the library 4 times a month. I'm just throwing out a number. How does the MBLC perceive that, I guess? What are the ramifications or repercussions of doing something like that?
We have to be open a certain number of hours per week for a certain number of weeks per year. And their formula actually takes into account that some libraries take Saturdays off in the summer or work half days on Saturday. We've never done that. So we have to be open 60 hours a week for something like, I don't know, like 50 weeks out of the year. Because they take, snow days and that kind of thing too into consideration. We opened this last year, right, October 13th. And we were pressured to open by MBLC, who said, the year started over here in July. And if you don't open by this weekend, you will not be able to meet the minimum number of hours open to get your $25,000 or whatever it is a year in state aid. So
Mhm.
they do pay attention, and I have to report every year. There's a statistical report that's actually due in about 2 weeks that tells how many days we were open over the year, how many hours after 5 o'clock, how many Saturday hours, how many Sunday hours. And if you don't meet your minimum requirement, they will withhold state aid, and they could decertify the library, not just withhold funding, but decertify the library, which also means now Grafton would become a silo where your card would not be good at any other library in the state, kind of as punishment for not getting the library funded.
Mhm.
There is also the grant assurances that we have to sign and recertify every time they offer us money for the Massachusetts Public Library Construction Program grant that says, among other things, yes, we will adequately fund the library. And I think a library that has to keep a teen room closed 4 days out of the week because there's no staff is not adequately meeting that certification. And there's an argument to be made that, okay, the kids are in school from 10 to 1 and they're not coming in, except it's summer. And they can't use the room because there's no staff at least 2 mornings a week. And I would not call that adequate funding.
So I guess I have a question. This is John. Do we have kind of like concrete data about how, if we did change the policy to minimum of 6, how many days out of the week, or how many hours, we'll say, how many hours out of the week would the library need to be shut down? And then how many hours do we currently, you kind of alluded to it there, I think, but how many hours do we currently have to shut down specific rooms and things with the current policy?
I don't have a projection, but I could probably come up with it in about a week. I do have a running list of, we had to close this room or pull somebody like from, technical services or the admin office to cover a service desk because there wasn't a person at the service desk for very legitimate reasons. Staff have leave time and we want them to take it. They have to take it. And sometimes it's, they were doing outreach or programming. We have a huge amount of pressure to do those things too, that, puts us out of the building or off the desk. So I have, like I said, a running list of, there was a gap here, there was a gap there. We called in a temp, or Beth came and staffed the desk, or we closed the desk. I will say that in general, there is a real reluctance to use the building because we really want to serve the public and feel committed to doing that.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Does the 6, and I'm kind of pressing you on the 6 because that's what we're talking about here, right? So if you have 6 people, you're not talking about 6 people all at the same time throughout the 10 to 9 shift. Are you talking that one person steps off and you have 5 people, like one person who leaves to go to have lunch, comes back, or maybe that one person is, staffing 10 to 4? So it's 6 people through the entire day, or is it 6 people throughout the entire day?
It's
Like at the same time?
6 people available minimum to be covering those service desks and a floater to cover as needed.
Right. So really we're talking, in order to do that, and people can have breaks and whatnot, we're talking about really 7, so that you can have 6 people working. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand it.
It's probably more when you count in, again, like programming and the frontline staff, 80% of their time is on the desk and 20% should be off the desk. And the managerial staff should be 80% in the office and only 20% coming out to cover the desk. So their frontline staff can take their break, do a program, or do their off the desk work.
Okay. I don't have any further feedback, except that it's I think I would be in favor of changing this policy. And we could put it up to a board vote. It's just I'm nervous, for lack of a better word, to see how this will be received by the public. Really, I'm advocating for the library and staff so that we can adequately provide services. But at the same token, I mean, as being part of the public and a patron, closing the library. I mean, are we talking probably not the whole day? It would probably be something like you might have to close for the morning because you don't have enough staff, or the evening. It's not that you'll just say, oh, we only have 5 people in the morning, so we have to close for the whole day. So I think there's probably some variability and flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay, I had one other point, but maybe it'll come back to me.
I do want to say tomorrow
Hmm.
we have been offered CPR training at the town. So it's scheduled from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And it's required for our food permit. We need anti-choking, and Heimlich maneuver is included with that training. And it's free instead of an astronomical fee. So I'm sending as many staff as I can tomorrow to go to this training from 10 to 2. But I also need people in the building. So we preemptively just opted to close youth services entirely to retain 2 borrower services staff upstairs, and then to call in 2 volunteers just to sit at a desk and say, yep, youth services is closed this morning. They'll open at 1. There's the hold shelf. There's the self-check. There's the return AMH. And if you have anything more complicated than that, you need to go and see somebody upstairs. And that's just really not ideal either, but we're very willing to go to some extreme measures to try and keep the building open. I didn't want to, close at feeling like I'm closing at the last minute because the training was only announced 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We didn't want to just close the whole building so that everybody could attend, but I have 2 staff who are now not going to get that certification.
Okay. I mean, that was a smart way to do that.
But it's also not ideal. We don't want to be in a position of the library can be staffed by volunteers. The volunteers who are coming in are only doing directional service, and they're not
Yep.
allowed to touch or look at the staff computers.
Yep.
So.
Yep, no, I remember that discussion. So the question, the other point that I had was, clearly this policy is in front of the policy committee because there's been some incidents, right? Where you really couldn't close the library when you needed to.
Right. Well, and also our staff are great, and they're really willing to say, yeah, I know there's only, 1 person upstairs and 2 down, but it's only for an hour and we'll be okay.
Yeah.
It happens too often, and again, having the teen room closed, there are teens who homeschool. And there are teenagers who have a driving lesson or doctor's appointment, and then they come to the library to kill some time, and they are around in the morning and they want to use the space and they can't. So it's a real disservice.
Okay. Any further discussion on the minimum number of staff? Anything else to review in this policy? Any other changes?
I don't think so.
Okay. So
I have one thing. So
Yeah.
this is John again. So I mean, I would just say that if we want to try to make this change and try to, I mean, so I assume that if we change this policy, ideally we need to get more money from the town, right? Or the town needs to kind of approve us having more people on staff, at the same time. So I think what we should focus on for now is to get that data about, if we look back, here's how many times we have not closed the library, but we should have, per the existing policy, right? And then on top of that, unfortunately, maybe to show if we do revise the policy to better fit our current library, to more accurately fit. I mean, let's just say we go from 4 to 6, which is still subpar. How that would even make the situation, it's necessary, but it would make the situation worse in a sense, and then kind of project that out. And I think if we can take that maybe to whoever we need to take that to in the town to show them, like, we've been getting by barely, and well, like barely, like 2 times over, it seems. And that should hopefully convince some people, or at least, help make our case about how much is being done right now above and beyond. So I don't know. That's just what I think.
It's helpful.
So John, this is Aaron. John, would you want to look at the data as if the policy read 6 minimum staff, right? Is that kind of what you were thinking? Because you said the policy as it currently stands, look at the data.
Yeah. So again, this is John. I think we should do 2 things. I think look at kind of, well, maybe even 3 things in a way, kind of break it down to say, here's what has been done. Here's what the staff had been doing. As Beth said, if there's only 3 people in the building, but they're willing to take that on, right? To kind of document how many times that has happened recently, and then maybe take, the month of August or something like that, or now to, for the next month, and further document those events to get that kind of concrete information. Then take that and also document if, how things would change, given that we should be enforcing the 4 minimum staff policy, and then how that would be further exacerbated with a 6 minimum staff policy. And again, we'll need to emphasize the points that 4 is not enough as it is already. And the library's been getting by with fewer than 4 on top of that. And so we should really be at 6, but we can't just, it sounds like we can't really just jump to 6, because it will, if we enforce the policy, or I guess, Beth, if you enforce the policy on your own staff, then it'll be really bad for both the library, the patrons, and then our own funding. It sounds like we get funding from, was it the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners? Yeah, so I'd be willing to do what I can to help with that. I don't know what access, what data we have, and if I have access to that, or if that's something that maybe, I don't know, we can just, if it can be documented by library staff or by you, Beth, I can try and take that and format it into something usable, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, we have the schedule is on a Google Doc. So I could add you, and the first page of the Google Doc is like closures and gaps. And I noticed today that there's a big lack of data from April until like today, because we stopped filling it in.
And that's why I said maybe
so
take this next month, and because I wasn't sure if this was, I just assumed that this wasn't necessarily being documented, because you're understaffed and you're trying to document more things. So
we
so
also
that makes sense.
need to take into account that I do have 2 vacancies. Like, we're filling positions, right? So I have somebody new who's going to be starting in August, and we're still negotiating another position. So that will help. So August might not be ideal. September, when everybody's done with summer vacation, would kind of be a good time to project out to, though. So there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really strapped right now because we've got these vacancies, and things just move really slowly in town government. It can take, you think that you can just hire somebody, post for 30 days, do your interviews in 2 weeks, and hire somebody. It takes 3 to 6 months sometimes to get somebody to win. So that doesn't help.
Yep. I would almost, and this is probably just for our own edification. I'd like to see if this policy was already at, less than 6 people, right? That's what we're saying. How many times we would have had to close a library in the past year, right? That's kind of, in that'll kind of allow us to project forward, and anticipate how many times, or at least what effect the policy change will have, right? But it almost seems like as you start to hire and you get a little bit more breathing room, that this policy will really just become a safety net, right? As you, sorry.
No, because we still
No.
don't have, again, like the library's open 60 hours and I don't have 60 hours of teen room coverage or reference desk coverage. So we still have that lack even when I hire a head of borrower services and a technical services librarian.
Yeah. So I think I heard you say the teen room a bunch of times tonight.
And how many incidents, Aaron, did you think, incident reports did I send in the last year? Because even with somebody in the teen room, sometimes even with 2 people in the teen room, there's 2 tutoring rooms, a large space with collections, a maker space, and a gaming room. And it's not possible to have a handle on the whole room and manage the behavior, even with 2 people after school on a given weekday or on an early release day. So, yeah.
So this is John. I have one more question about this. So I guess is the main problem that we don't have enough money to keep staff to bring the staff in on a daily basis, or is it that we don't have people hired, or is it both? I mean, well, it sounds like hired is the problem.
Yeah, except we hired a teen services like assistant. So the real issue is that the budget was capped at not to grow more than $100,000, which is extremely generous. So you can have your new building, but your budget can't increase more than $100,000. And right off the bat, to maintain the new building, we had more than $80,000 in expenses, not necessarily unanticipated expenses, but like the self-check contract was $25,000, and I hadn't expected that. The electricity, we budgeted like $43,000, and then the electrical bills well exceeded that cost. So we had so many mandatory expenses getting close to that $100,000 cap that there wasn't then more money to put into staffing, and we couldn't say, we're not going to pay the electric bill because we have to hire people to work on the desk. So that's really what it was, that we could only grow the budget so much. And again, like, to be fair to other town departments who also have absolutely legitimate needs. And it's greedy to say, no, we really needed 150,000 or 160,000 or 200,000 so we could completely staff the building. We just said, we can't. We'll give you as much as we can. And then I got a little bit more, but it still is inadequate if we're open 60 hours a week to have, 5 service desks, and 2 of those desks, we just don't have coverage after the 18 and the 35-hour person are scheduled. It doesn't total 50 hours.
Okay. So perhaps, we're not ready to bring this to the policy, for the agenda on Wednesday.
Absolutely.
So I think that definitely will have something either to approve or not approve if by the August meeting. So generally you guys meet for an hour, is that correct? It looks like Debbie's still in the office, so we don't want to keep her later than that.
I actually have to go. They're at the door now.
Yeah.
So
I think
I'm happy to table the next.
I agree with that. So I will hear a motion to adjourn.
We
How's
do
that?
need to pick a new meeting time. Are we able to meet like if the board meets on the fourth Wednesday, can policy committee meet on the second Wednesday so that the meetings are all on the same weeknight?
You would prefer Wednesdays? Yeah, my Wednesdays are generally open, so.
Go Debbie, thank you. I gotta drag her out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wednesdays would work better for me as well, I think, so.
Okay,
So it would be one meeting a month,
yeah,
okay? And it would be kind of, so we'd be meeting basically every other Wednesday, more or less, between board and policy committee.
yeah. So next policy committee meeting would be the 10th of August, and then the board meeting would be the 24th. It also gives us time to get things to legal for the board to
Yeah.
review before the meeting. And it's consistent from my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. So I think what's hard for me and maybe John to visualize is kind of where the bodies are needed. I know you've described it to us, and there's a little bit of it describes a little bit in the policy there, but for me it's a little hard to visualize. Either I need to be there, or I need to look at a building plan, or I need to see like a table of it, and maybe that's in the staffing sheet that you're going to share with John.
Yeah.
So that's where I struggle with this.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one hard thing too is it can be very unpredictable. Like I'll schedule 6 people, like what's today, Monday? We had 6 people scheduled for Monday morning. 5 of them were coming in at 10. One person was going to be there at 9:30 to like get the computers on and make sure the front door was unlocked for 10 o'clock, and she called out sick. And we had somebody on vacation, and we have this borrower services head vacancy. So I sat on the desk upstairs alone on the second floor for 3.5 hours until a staff member came in to relieve me. And it had, again, people are absolutely entitled to their leave time, but had we not had people out on vacation and calling in sick, like you would have had 2 people, you wouldn't have had the phone ringing off the hook, you wouldn't have had people waiting in line to be helped. I would have gotten to go to the bathroom before 1:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough. And there's about 1,200 hours of leave time that benefited staff have, if you total it all up. With some people have 2 weeks, some people have 3 weeks, some people have 4 weeks vacation. Everyone has 3 personal days. And then we also earn sick time. Right now, if you have a COVID symptom, you can't come back to work without a doctor's note. So there's, so we're in extreme circumstances right now still because of the pandemic with,
Yeah.
Waiting for a test result or in a doctor's note, and, maybe feeling well enough to work, but technically you've got a symptom, you can't come in. So
Yeah.
that's an
So-
all unanticipated.
Yeah, right. So certainly the pandemic has exacerbated the need for this policy and minimum staffing. I remember you going through it and having people just, they can't come in, they might be feeling fine, but they have to have a doctor's note. So, well, so my other question before we adjourn is, what's a good time? I felt like 8 o'clock, I was really kind of stretching it. Like I had dinner already, and I have a job that's local now, so I'm not really rushing from the train station anymore. I'd be okay to meet earlier if you guys are, if that works out better.
Yeah.
Okay.
7 is fine. Stephanie had asked for 8, but it might have been a one-time thing. I'm not sure.
Okay.
7
Yeah.
works.
So our next meeting then will be, what did you say?
10.
The 10th of August at 7 p.m. Okay. And the need to have a public meeting was because we have 3 trustees.
It's because we're technically supposed to follow open meeting law, even in a subcommittee, and we have
I
not.
read that.
Yeah, so we should always be posting an agenda and having it be a public meeting. And
Okay.
offering it.
Yeah.
So,
kind of like building committee, right? Even though it's not really it's not really a subcommittee of the Board of Trustees, but that's a public meeting, isn't it?
They're their own committee, but the Interior Subcommittee met in public meeting.
Okay,
And, so people could come and look at furniture and touch the textiles or get on the Zoom link and have comment. Often nobody did. But, we did it for that subcommittee, and I realized in the past, I think subcommittee has met and there have been minutes that were shared, and yeah, so I feel like we've been remiss and need to.
Right. So further, so we've had our meeting. Debbie's going to draft the minutes. I guess the subcommittee would approve the minutes and then just make them available to the board.
I think so. Yeah, they'll be posted on the town website, and also the chair at the next Board of Trustees meeting can say the subcommittee met on this date at this time. We discussed
Mhm.
unaccompanied adult, and I feel like it's fine as it. We had a good conversation around minimum staffing, but haven't reached any conclusions yet. We're gathering data, and we tabled the discussion of the 3D printer. So you'd have to give an update.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's all I wanted to chat about. So I think we are ready to adjourn. So Beth, you are also a full-fledged member of the policy committee, right?
I move to adjourn at 9:03 PM.
Second, all in favor? Aaron, aye. Beth
That's like
John,
and
I.
John. Great. I declare the motion carried.